And I'll start on the chairperson of the board, Lisa Barron.
Good morning, Adrian Katz, Vice Chair.
Glenn McCray.
Jess Leal, Principal Assistant.
Josh Reyes, consultant for the Library of Vermont.
Catherine Delnau, I'm the state librarian and the secretary to the board. So those are all of us in person this morning. And
Yeah, if you guys
Jennifer
online.
Fells. Jennifer Fells, North Bennington.
Linda, looks like you're muted.
Linda Sarnioki, Weston.
And then
it looks like we have some other folks who are online from Central Vermont who are with the department. So Tom McMurdo just jumped on screen. So, and Jeanette. So can you all introduce yourselves as well?
Good morning. I'm Tom McMurdo, Department of Libraries, East Montpelier.
Hi, Jeanette Schaefer. I'm the Assistant State Librarian for Library Advancement, and I'm sorry I can't be there. I'm covering in the building today.
Let's go to Joy, then Lauren, then Carolyn.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joy Warland, and I'm the consultant for continuing education in small rural libraries.
Hi, Lauren Kelly, Technical Services Consultant.
Sorry, I didn't realize my camera was still covered. Good morning, all. My name is Carolyn Mark. I'm the Director of Interlibrary Loan and Government Services at the Department of Libraries. Thanks, all.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. Should I actually read through it? Or just, sure. Okay, so after this, we have public comment and then approval of the minutes from April. Then we will talk about the amendments to the bylaws. We have the state librarian's report, and then we have an in-person tour here at the St. Albans Free Library. We'll recess for lunch and transit to the Fairfax Community Library, which we will also tour, and then we'll adjourn. So.
I'll move to accept the agenda.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Jennifer? Okay. Any
I'll
discussion?
second.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right, so that agenda is adopted. And if there isn't anything further, I'll move on to public comment. Do we have any?
We should, one thing to mention, we do have a member of the press here with us today.
Yes.
So you may not see him because he's sitting slightly off camera. Actually, I think you may be able to see him in the shot with Glenn. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I tend to come to Fairfax a lot, so I've been to their library quite a bit.
Thanks for joining.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh,
My name is Aiden. I'm a reporter with St. Albans Messenger.
Okay,
Aiden,
thank you.
State Albans Messenger.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks. As you're here to keep us on the straight and narrow.
I'm the secretary. I like to.
And I appreciate it. Okay, so we'll move on to the approval of the April 14, 2026 minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Yeah, okay. Well, if there aren't any, if everyone's approved, reviewed them, if
I'll move to accept the minutes for the April 14th meeting.
I'll second that, Linda.
okay, thank you. Jennifer, okay. Any discussion about the minutes?
No, that was Linda, I think.
Was it?
It was
I
both
just
of
said
us.
Oh, okay.
We demand equal representation, please.
This is the third.
Yes, yes. Okay, any discussion? No? All right, then, all in favor? Raise your hand or say aye. Okay. Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
I know, it's fast.
I'm not trying to be fast though. That isn't my,
More time for a tour, yeah.
it's definitely my natural state is to move quickly, so please feel free to stop me if I'm going too quick. So we're gonna talk about the bylaws amendment that we've been talking about for a few months. And we're not gonna be able to vote on it today, but, I'm gonna turn it over to Kelly.
Okay. Um, the board has been discussing its bylaws and specifically the regular meeting schedule. And for those of you who are remote, you can't see much of it except behind Glenn, but I've drawn, I don't know if there's a way, Josh.
If Glenn talks, it'll aim at.
Yeah, maybe if two of us, hold on a second, maybe if I talk and Glenn's in the camera, this will zoom out enough to see it, kind of. So just to frame this conversation, I've made a very rudimentary grid showing April is a regular meeting. Today is not quite a regular meeting because we are in a different location, and in the bylaws, the regular meetings are online with an option to attend in Barrie. The primary location today is, of course, the St. Albans, and we're happy to have folks attending in Barrie and also in Weston. And Jennifer, what municipality are you in? I'm blanking. But hello, take a seat. So today is technically a special meeting because of our location. So while we had planned to potentially vote on amendments that were brought before the board and introduced to the public, posted online, we had all of the regular process. When I did a closer reading of the bylaws, it seems like today is not the date to vote on those amendments that were proposed in April. Therefore, we could vote on those amendments in October because they would have been proposed at the last regular meeting of the board in April. So that's a possibility. Our two upcoming regular meetings are October and January, and I am aware that we are really going into the fine minutia of the bylaws and very close reading of them. We're doing that just because we want to be sure that we're setting a good example. We're not kind of circumventing our own bylaws or the open meeting process with how we noticed our special meeting location. This seems like a lot of activity to amend bylaws, which brings me to something that Glenn suggested earlier this year, which is that the board might want to consider a different route, which would be having a small group meet, a committee, or a two-person group would also be good. That would work on a new version of the bylaws, specifically focusing on that regular meeting language to make it easier for the board to set its regular meetings through the resolution process. So the bylaws are really specific about what constitutes a regular meeting, what regular meeting takes place, when that regular meeting takes place. Whereas a resolution is a bit more adaptable and easier to change. It doesn't require a 6-month lead time, and that nobody ever goes on site during any of the meetings. So as the secretary to the board and a non-voting member, my recommendation is that you consider the idea of having the bylaws revision language adapted a little bit more, revised a little bit more, that it would explain that the meetings could be set through resolution on an annual basis. So that's what I'm about to say. You're also, you could simply vote on the revisions we've been looking at, but not today. That makes sense. Okay, so that's sort of the framing of it. Now, I'm happy to sit back and listen to the discussion and take your direction as a secretary. I also want to just give folks who have just come in and maybe you could have them introduce themselves so that.
Oh, yes.
We do have some representatives.
Yeah, hi, if you two could introduce yourselves for the record, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm Lynn Dickinson. I represent St. Albans Town. I sit on the Appropriations Committee, and one of my topics that I deal with in appropriations is the libraries.
Great, welcome.
Yes, that's where their money.
I'm Douglas Farnham, I'm the Chief Recovery Officer. I oversee the pandemic programs and flood recovery efforts. So the ARPA capital projects program that Commissioner Delano administered is one of the programs in my portfolio.
Oh, welcome.
You're welcome to sit at the table.
Yeah, that's an empty chair.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so I'm turning it back to you for conversation.
And Lisa, just for the record, since we have legislator and official, we do have a member of the press here.
Okay.
St. Albans Messenger, just
Sure.
so you know, it's an open meeting, it's recorded, so it's
Yeah.
nothing but.
I'm used to that.
Yeah, I'm sure you are, but it's not a committee room, so just making
I
sure.
just want to say that I do have to leave early because I have to be at another event in Swan.
But we really appreciate
Yeah.
folks coming. We don't always
No, we don't.
visitors.
Very nice. Okay, so Kathy kind of went over, her thoughts, and I have to say, I think it's a good, adjustment to what we've already talked about, only because, like, if you know, all of you think back to, what we've kind of gone through in the last few months about trying to get the bylaws updated, it's been pretty arduous, and it really shouldn't be this difficult to figure out a cadence of meetings. So if you want to express your thoughts, that would be really helpful to sort of get some of the other members of what they think.
Well, I guess I can start since Kathy referenced my suggestion. I mean, 40 years of writing nonprofit bylaws, specificity is not your friend at all. It's an arduous process. You end up more in violation of them despite best efforts. And the idea is to provide structure. And then within that structure, have operating principles that allow you to do annual planning, but also to modify it as opportunity actually creates itself. And if opportunity was to have, 2 in-person meetings at libraries throughout, I mean, this is great. And this is the first time I've been accessing this library. And, that's kind of exciting to see and to have that knowledge base on the ground. So maybe we might want to do 2 some year. Maybe there may be a special event or opportunity that's really salient to programming that the Department of Libraries is doing that we want to take a look at. So creating that flexibility, I think, is really important. So getting the bylaws to allow for that without it being the convoluted process that we've seen over the last 6 months, I think would benefit us. And I don't think it's a complex rewriting of the bylaws. So it'd be rewriting them so there's less specificity, creating an operating principle for how we make those decisions and the kind of schedule we do that on. I think it's a good way forward.
I also agree that working in a small community would allow for deep concentrated work that would build more consensus, and then we could bring that back to the full board for their review.
Linda?
Yeah, excuse me, I completely agree with that it's really important not to have them be too specific. I guess my question is, if this group is getting together to look at this particular aspect of the bylaws, I wonder if there are any other aspects of the bylaws that we might look at as well. But perhaps we don't want to go through a full-on review of the bylaws and focus just on this, but it would be an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. It might be a big thing though to do, maybe just start with this part. And maybe it could be an ongoing committee. I don't know.
I think, if we suggest that, decide, okay, here's the committee membership, they're gonna meet August, early September, whatever it is to then charge each member of the board to review the bylaws and say, here are the specific sections we think would be worth taking a look at. Let the committee do that and then come back with recommendations at the October meeting. But I don't think it's a bad thing to kind of look at the overall structure, but my recollection of the bylaws is, this is the one area that needs, some minor tweaking to allow the board to be more effective.
Okay, so. If people are interested in, being on that committee, and I think, what, do you think it should just be 2 people or not more than a quorum? Is that?
My sense is that if it's a committee that's tasked with work,
That's where I get fuzzy.
I mean, there's no harm in warning. I mean, it's an open meeting. If other people want to come in and have, either just listen in, which is great.
Yeah.
The more interest, the better,
Oh, that's true, that's true.
on it. So I think it can be two, or, it can be 2 members of the board with Kathy, and
That's true.
I think 3 is always a good number.
Yeah. More than-
And it's still not too many cooks in the kitchen to mess it up.
yeah, we're probably erring on the side of caution
Yeah.
to warn it, but it's not a bad idea since it's a subcommittee of an open body.
And working on our schedules, we're gonna have to have plenty of notice anyways, so
Sure.
it's not a major issue. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of public interest in bylaw discussions on.
Yeah, it will be a hot topic, I'm sure.
Well, it's gonna be headline in the local paper here. We're gonna get a lot of St. Albans things, I'm sure, coming in. We will count on you.
Okay,
So can I repeat what I think
please do.
what I think the process you've described is, which is that every board member will review the current bylaws and note any areas, I'm looking at you suddenly as if you're one of the board members.
You can surely.
Every board member will review the bylaws as they stand currently and provide feedback. I think it would make sense to send that to me and Jess.
Yes.
I'm the secretary and then Jess is the helper to the secretary. So if you send that to me and Jess, then when the small group of 2 board members plus the secretary convene, probably in August, we will have your instruction as far as which areas we could potentially look at, given the time that we have, including the regular meetings. Does that sound correct?
Friendly amendment that we request board members review and get their feedback in by August 1st. I think if they're gonna do it, they're gonna read it, today or tomorrow, and then they're gonna forget about it. At least I am.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's already the 14th, I mean, it's only 2 weeks.
Okay, so by August 1st, we ask board members to each look at the full bylaws and provide areas that they think should have closer inspection for potential revision. So then you all need to decide who's going to do that work in the group that meets in August. The subcommittee on bylaws.
And I would volunteer to be one of the.
Good, great.
members of that.
I appreciate that. I think you have a lot of knowledge and will be giving good advice. Is there anyone else that's interested in being on the bylaw committee? Okay. Well,
I could probably.
I think
it's.
that would be great. You have really good ideas too, so
Yeah.
I think that would be good. So Adrienne Katz and Glenn McCrae and Kathy Del Neo will be the committee, the bylaw committee. We need name tags.
And do we, to form the subcommittee with that charge, should there be a motion or we just form the subcommittee?
Yes. I'll entertain a motion to create the bylaw subcommittee with the members of Glenn McCrae and Adrian Cavadel. Oh, Jennifer, okay, so moved. I got a second?
I'll second. Linda?
Thank you, Linda. Is there any discussion about that? No? All right, all in favor? Say aye or raise your hand. Okay. Any opposed? Excuse me. No? Okay, then, motion passes. All right, that's good. I think that's gonna be really helpful to kind of move things forward and get us on a good track by 2027, maybe. Okay. Well, if there's nothing on that, then we'll move on to your report, the state librarian's report.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. The state librarian's report was posted on Friday on your website. I hope you got a chance to read it, but I realized some of you may not have. So just a show of hands if you did see it. Some of you have seen it. Okay. Okay. Then I'll go into it in medium depth. How does that sound? I won't
Sounds
gloss
good.
over all of it and just move to your questions. We had an opportunity on July 13th to welcome Alina Ross Becker to our department. Alina is joining us in the Able Library and serves as the program technician 1. So that just happened yesterday.
Oh.
And basically we've welcomed her and gotten her started. And I think she's taking new staff orientation with HR this morning. And that position had been vacant for quite a while following the retirement of Sarah Blow. And Alina actually brings a good deal of experience serving youth with print disabilities to her work, and we're really excited to have her on board. We are continuing our recruitments for 2 positions, the consultant for library operations in Jeanette's team in library advancement. And this recruitment has been a tough one. It's hard to find people with the appropriate skills and knowledge to serve as a resource for public library directors. And so we have kind of posted it and then it hasn't filled and we're trying again. And we also have an open grant specialist limited service position to support our capital projects, Treasury Capital Projects Fund and the HUD Capital Projects Program. And we are currently engaged in the interview process for this position. I want to give big kudos to Lauren Kelly. Lauren, you don't have to come on screen, but you could, if you wished, come on screen and we can all thank you for the great work you've done this year. Lauren was the department's Public Service Award recipient this year and attended the governor's Public Service Recognition Award. And it was really great to be able to sing Lauren's praises for doing kind of a normally kind of unsung part of library work with cataloging and technical services. Lauren does a great job with instruction and the continuing education courses that she teaches and the roundtable that she hosts are really well attended. And cataloging is an area that people either love or hate, I would say. And Lauren makes cataloging something to love, which is wonderful. She's also kind of I don't know, let's say Lauren is also doing a lot with helping staff morale and getting people to participate in the VT Shares program. And so she's really a leader in that way as well. So we appreciate her work and it was fun to recognize her. And I got to meet her dad, who I've heard so much about. Jeanette has embarked on another hidden activity of the department. And just so you're aware, Jeanette's going to be extraordinarily busy and so will many of us. The next topic on the report is just the Grants to States 5-year evaluation. So as part of our Institute of Museum and Library Services 5-year plan, there is an independent review. So the department did a simplified bid and we have We have procured services for doing this important evaluation work. We're working with constructive disruption. Those of you who have been watching the department for a while might know that that's the group that helped with the salary survey of the working group report. So we have some good experience working with them. Their bid was the most closely aligned with the department's goals. And we're really lucky because the folks that we're working with actually have experience as directors in Vermont, even though neither of them still live in Vermont. So they've got a connection to our community, which I think is really helpful as they do the evaluation. So they're working with Jeanette right now on a survey of library patrons, library staff, and partners. And so that's basically everybody in Vermont. And then they'll be conducting strategic interviews and town halls and focus groups. And Josh will probably have to get involved because there are a bunch of metrics to be evaluated as well. And we've done really well with these reports in the past with finding that we're really making good progress toward the incremental goals in the last 5-year plan. And I hope that we will find that we have done good work this time as well. We really are trying to engage more Vermonters in the review process though. And we're hopeful that this consultant will be able to do that more effectively than ones we've actually worked with in the past. Quick legislative recap. I know the board's been watching the legislature. The two biggest impact bills for libraries are S232. Well, that's the two biggest kind of one-time special bills. Our appropriations bills are also quite important to the Department of Libraries. Very. I don't want to minimize that. Act S232, I'm sorry, S232 became Act 127 when it was signed, and that's an act relating to public libraries and the Department of Libraries. That went into effect on the 1st of this month, and on the 2nd, I did a webinar for the library community just to orient them to that. And board members, you're welcome to access that webinar through our Niche Academy learning platform. And then the second bill that relates to public libraries and that the department was getting questions about was Act 150, which had been Act 209, S209, and that relates to prohibiting civil arrest in sensitive locations. That went into effect on the 16th of June when the governor signed it. And I presented an overview for the library community. These weren't incredibly well attended, which was a little bit frustrating because I put quite a lot of time into the PowerPoints, but we know that a lot of our folks are serving the public at the time of the webinar, so we're sure that they'll get more hits on the Niche Academy platform later on. So those were both good opportunities just to be sure that we were out in front, letting people know about the legislation. And folks had questions specifically with Act 150, should they have new policies? We really are recommending that they continue doing what they're doing, that people not interfere with law enforcement if law enforcement arrives at their library for any reason. Remembering there's patron confidentiality, nothing is really different here. But kind of referring folks to the Secretary of, referring folks to the Attorney General's existing guidance for public buildings and law enforcement. So I think that the folks who attended appreciated that, and we understand that the Vermont Library Association will have another webinar and that they're launching that in August. And they'll be joined by the ACLU at that one. So there may be a different perspective, which is fine. They're all different perspectives, but the department's really encouraging people not to become a part of that interaction and to recognize that there are still many instances in which law enforcement may arrest someone lawfully in a public library. So in the fun category, I would say we have gotten a lot of funding out to folks through summer reading program grants, and we granted $350 to 148 public libraries for a total of $51,800. And this year, the Agency of Administration supported the department with the funds for that award because the Smith Fund is what we usually use, but it didn't perform very well. So we really appreciate that. And we are hopeful that we will see even more engagement than last year because we've added 2 libraries to the grant program. Last year, the 146 recipients had programs that drew more than 22,000 attendees. So this is a little bit of money that goes a really long way in our state.
Kathy, if I,
Yeah.
do you have any idea why, for the libraries who are not participating, what the reason is? They're kind of, it's not a lot of money, one.
That's the $1 million question, Glenn.
Yeah.
And I'll get to something related to it a little bit later in the report, but we have been trying to figure out who's not applying, why they're not applying, and to make some incremental strides. One thing that we're really glad of is that when we visit libraries, then they become engaged. So that's one reason, you know, I like the idea of visiting, like you, Glenn, I like the idea of visiting every library in the state, but it's actually the case that when I go to Lowell, suddenly they apply for a grant. Or when I go to Lunenburg, suddenly they apply for a grant. And when Josh reaches out to them around the public library survey, suddenly they're like, oh, wait, there's a department. What's going on here? So these outreach opportunities through Capital for a Day or the department's independent outreach are really effective at getting more folks involved. And we'll talk about a little bit later in the report. There's just some information about what we're doing to get to those other libraries of the 186 who aren't as engaged. The Winnieville Learned Grants moved from the Vermont Public Library Foundation, which we found dissolved, over to the department. And this is the first year that the department has run those that grant program, and Jeanette did a great job with that. I want to thank her. We had funding for, I think we received about $18,000 in a distribution from that last year. And these awards are supposed to be, the donor intent was to give modest awards of $2,500, that they be youth focused. And this year we kind of, as we moved it into our department, we thought about what some of the department's objectives are, how little funding there was to celebrate the 250th and the state becoming a republic. It's a 2-year grant. And so we asked the applicants to really focus their grant applications on the 250th anniversary of the United States and really thinking about Vermont statehood. And we were pleased to give the awards to 8 libraries. One of those we made with general funds. Their program was so outstanding that we decided we would, instead of just having 7 awards, we would give 8 this year. So those programs are in flight and we should be hearing about them soon and how they're doing and what impacts those funds are having. Another big grant program that we are in the midst of is our U.S. Department of Treasury Capital Projects Fund. We have granted out 51%. I'm going to be honest, and I say this with Doug in the room. They're making me nervous, and I'm spending a lot of time just following up with some of the subrecipients who we want them to send in their receipts, send in their invoices for billable expenses, and really get more of those dollars reimbursed. We are glad to say that the Judavin Memorial Library in Hardwick and Brandon Free Public Library have completed. We believe that 2 of our libraries, Wilder and they're in Weston, Linda's hear from them, and the Leach Library in Irisburg are both nearing completion. There is going to be an opening event at Wilder on the 8th of August. And at Leach on the 26th of September, which is great. And a lot of the other libraries are just hard at work and will be finishing up this fall and early winter. Everyone needs to finish by the 15th of December. That is when they need to be done. And we're really impressing that upon them and having some frequent check-ins with folks. So a lot of things going on there, including a site visit to the Johnson Public Library, which you'll remember moved. I went out there with Tom McMurdo and Mark McClary on the 22nd of June, and we went up to Groton, which their work is in progress right now, on the 26th of June. And we're going to continue doing site visits. The other federal program that we're administering right now is the Housing and Urban Development Public Facilities Preservation Initiative grant. And we received applications. I think we had 59 applications for those funds, and that's a $10 million program. We will be making awards, I hope, later this summer. And I can't really tell you much else about what's going on right now. We're still in the process of selecting the awardees. So cone of silence. The public library survey is something we do every year. That's another behind the scenes thing. I want to thank Josh for doing the lion's share of that work. We had a wrinkle in our process this year because when Baker and Taylor, the book jobber, went out of business, they took with them Bibliostat, which was the platform where the libraries submitted their public library survey data. So Josh did what we do best in the Department of Libraries, and he opened a gigantic spreadsheet and, and gathered the data. And he actually, I was connecting with him last week about the report, and I think it was on Thursday that he submitted it. So it still needs to be vetted and finalized, and I have to go in and sign something to say, yes, this is really our report. But to Glenn's earlier question, we have 34 public libraries that did not submit data. Those are very similar to the group that does not request grant funding. Occasionally, there's someone who doesn't request grant funding because they have many resources and they don't want to kind of take more than they need. I'm thinking of, I think Killington very frequently doesn't apply for grants because they have more robust funding. But these 34 public libraries in a lot of cases are some of the smallest ones in rural communities. And we are actually trying to find out, do they exist? Are they still out there? So step one was checking the Secretary of State's business search for the incorporated public libraries, figuring if they are keeping that up to date, they are likely still public libraries. But really, we're doing deeper engagement with them. And Josh made what he called a survey light, I think, which was just to say, okay, you're not going to fill out the hundreds of questions in the National Public Library Survey, but maybe you could tell us if you exist, if you are open, like how many hours, how much funding do you get from your municipality, circulation, just kind of the library basics. So Josh has heard back from 15 of the libraries. The consultants have been doing outreach phone calls, and we've heard back from 15 of the 34, which is actually great. And I think the next step is that we just lay in wait when we think they're open and try to catch them. I'm not sure. I've been threatening to do that for a while, and I have actually done that to one library where I saw an open sign and just turned right and went there, and that was Burke Mountain Club and library, and then we've seen them become more engaged. So I think if we have any that we really can't figure out what's going on, the next step for municipal public libraries to contact the municipality and ask, does it still exist? Who is there? What's the story?
So if it would be, I have two other projects that
Yeah.
are taking me out to libraries. So if it is helpful messaging wise, I'm happy to go, if I'm in an area doing that. And if that just make notes, I'm going to be in Heinsberg and Manchester. I'm going to see what their project, what their 250 project is. And then I'm in Judavine, Brandon and Johnson in the next couple of weeks as well. But
So
if
you might
there's,
pass somebody along the way.
absolutely. So if there's a list of what those libraries are, and I can help identify, oh, yes, they are open, this is the name of the person, and just, recommend they get in touch with the department. Happy to take that message out.
Thank you.
And I'm sure other.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we might have knowledge of one of them.
Yeah, my guess is that some of them are open very few hours. And so what happens is that they don't have the capacity to then answer the surveys or apply for the grants, or maybe even do some of the programming, but then we would want to support them and engage them. So I think that would be helpful to have that.
And one time them into local schools,
Yeah.
we could actually do it on their behalf. So I'm thinking of like Vermont I want to get in that library, but I think they're only open for like 2 hours every summer.
Let's go together because they're the only one I haven't visited in their county, and I'd like to color the county.
I drive to Albert all the time. That's where my dad lives.
Yeah, it's a great little building, and I've been by it a number of times with that.
There's some that I just peer in. Another one that I peer in sometimes is the Joe's Pond Public Library, which I don't even think is on our list. It's like as big as this table.
Yeah.
So I often am like, let me in, but nobody's in there.
Okay. But yes, so if you want to just keep me apprised, that'd be great.
The next thing on the report is really just it's a new initiative that we're trying to work toward having more resources available in non-English languages for Vermonters. And there's kind of a two-piece activity. So one of the things we've done is to develop Welcome to the Library videos in 18 languages, most spoken by Vermonters, and those are posted on the department's website. During the COVID pandemic, we had used some ARPA funds from Institute of Museum and Library Services to do like a one-page document. So this is the next expansion, which is, thank you.
I'm gonna leave, but thank you. This is really interesting.
Thanks for coming. So we have, in some cases now, got the printed piece and the video, and in many cases, folks who have come to the United States from another country aren't familiar with the concept of public libraries, or public libraries may offer different services there. So it's really just an engagement tool that libraries can pick up and then share out on social media or with communities that they're serving. We've also expanded our collections of French and Spanish language books. So if you visited Hudson Berry right now, you would find us a seed in multilingual texts. And Lauren is valiantly working through many of those books as well as some other materials. Our plan is to make deposit collections in Spanish and French available to libraries. It's hard to collect materials in different languages if you don't speak those languages. So the idea is that, like our Able Library large print books, we do deposit collections with those, and we can similarly do loan out deposit collections to libraries. So we're seeing how it goes. So that is something that is new this year. I want to just say thank you to our colleagues in New Jersey who brought us a full day information literacy skills-based training for library staff. And I think that was attended by 34 people. It was hosted in Montpelier, and thanks to Joy for setting that up. It was a really great day. We had some staff attend. I think Jonathan, Joy, Josh, and I went, and it was free. The New Jersey State Library provided that to us. They paid for their own accommodations. We got fed multiple times. It was pretty impressive. So that was made possible through their state library and a grant from Institute of Museum and Library Services. The next thing there are just two more topics. I'll go quickly. The Vermont Library Association held its conference on the 1st of June. And we had a number of programs that department staff presented. Josh and Joy participated in a program about sharing library staff across institutions. So that was an interesting one with a lot of folks showed up for it. Carolyn worked with Department of Labor to present on libraries and workforce development, which was a great partnership with our colleagues in Department of Labor. And Karen Bravlin of the Able Library and Inclusive Services fame, she was on a panel about library services to justice involved individuals. So both the folks that we serve in the correctional facilities and then others involved in the justice system. And I spoke very briefly at the end of the day. Everybody wanted to get to the after party at the Fletcher Free Library, so I kept it short. And Joy Borland presented certificates to those who had graduated the department's Certificate of Public Librarianship program, including one of your board members, Glenn. Glenn received a certificate. So
That's
was
a good
very
thing
fun.
Joy was in charge of spelling my name on the certificate because it's misspelled in your report.
Oh,
That's wonderful. Good for you.
no.
I thought about doing that, but that's.
I am the
Thank you,
worst.
Joy.
Thank you, Joy. Good job. Next time, Joy, you'll proofread the report. And then Glenn, do you want to share about your program at the VLA?
Yeah, so I'm doing a small project for the Center for Community News at University of Vermont. And the idea behind this project is looking at the intersection between helping support a vibrant community news and information ecosystem and the libraries. What role do libraries play? And so libraries obviously play the role of depository for both current information on what's happening locally, as well as if there are local newspapers print or links, if there are local news sources on their website, which is something we hope to generate more activity with. But then also there's a movement across the country of different ways in which libraries are actively programming interactions with local media sources. And so part of what I'm doing is visiting libraries around the state, looking at those types of opportunities that strengthen both what the library can do to serve the community, but also what local media opportunities and local media can take to strengthen their ability both to produce news and disseminate it in a way. And it meets, the criteria of a vibrant local democracy is based on good, accurate information. That's the role of the local media, but it's also the role of the library to make sure that is actually out there. So hopefully we'll be doing a webinar on the project with Joy in the fall at some point based on the workshop that we presented at the VLA conference. And we'll be doing some reporting on that through the fall.
Great. And it was very well attended. I was one of probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 people who came to the workshop. So I know there's a lot of interest in that. Just to close out the department's outreach since we last met in April, in addition to the visits that we've done for specific projects, Jeanette Schaefer, Tom McMurdo, and I participated in Library Legislative Day at the State House in April. And it was a great day to engage with folks around the importance of libraries. It's always really nice to be there at the State House because there's across the political spectrum, people stop in and talk about their local library and how important it is to them. I had the I always talk about the things that are most embarrassing to me. I don't know why. It's like a problem I have. Mind. Imagine that you are about to read Chicken Story Time and the Secretary of Administration, Sarah Clark, shows up in the room and she's like, Kathy, it's you. And I'm like, I'm about to buck like a chicken for 10 minutes there. But I think the kids really enjoyed it. And it was great to have it. Sometimes last year we did the story time on the steps of the State House. So I don't think the legislators really got the full effect. Having it in the State House this year was really, really nice. And all of the kids who usually go to Kellogg Hubbard for story time at that time trooped over, and there were strollers, and it was really fun. And I think people saw that kind of active participation in the literacy program at the State House, which I do think helps the legislators to understand what libraries do. And people would walk into the room and they were looking down, and then they just looked around, and it was just really fun to be there that day. The other outreach, Josh and I keep going on the road for these Capital for a Days. Josh joined me down in Rutland County. We saw the snow at the K1 Lodge in Killington during the cabinet meeting. It was shocking to still see snow on the ground. And then we visited the Bailey Memorial Library in North Clarendon. And it was great to have Secretary Clark and Nick Kramer from Agency of Administration there with us. I think we may see them later today, one of them later today. Sarah always says that going to the libraries is one of her favorite activities. So it's like spreading the library joy is great. And then we also visited the Fairhaven Public Library, which is, it's a historic Carnegie building, and there are only a handful of Carnegies in Vermont, so it's cool to see it. And there's like a whispering, echoey phenomenon there that they discovered when they pulled the reference desk out of this little rotunda. And so we had fun with that, and they have a very large basement. I love seeing the basements, so that is. With that, I conclude the state librarian's report. And I'm happy to take questions before we embark on our tour of this.
I'm sure disaster recovery doesn't like to see basements too often.
I bet.
So,
We always recommend that the books be up off the floor if they need to be stored in the basement. And sometimes I visit libraries and they're like, well, we want to renovate, we want to have more storage down here. And I really try to dissuade people in Vermont libraries from doing much storage in the basement. Once you put something down there, it, you know, I really encourage reading the collection to the size of the library and storing things in kind of high and dry spaces.
I got a tour at Kellogg Hubbard, and their basement renovation is really impressive. There, what they've done, first bringing all mechanicals up. So it's almost kind of a problem they had the last time, but also creating a space down there that it's going to flood, it's going to flood, and it really won't take much to clean it up at this time because there's no press board or, you know, anything there. A lot of glass dividers, which can be easily cleaned. So, and given their history and the fact that, unlike Johnson, they aren't going to move that library, that's really impressive.
Linda?
yeah, thanks. I just have a question about about the federal grants, which we in Weston were enormously thankful for, and made a huge difference in our ability to renovate and expand our library, which, as you know, August 8th, please, 3 to 5 p.m. Happy to have anybody come and celebrate with us. Cookies and lemonade, speeches, ribbon cutting, all that fun stuff. And you can also get your face painted. But Kathy, I have a question about the deadline for those grants or those projects to be completed is December. And given what we have gone through in trying to get our project finished, which was supposed to finish in February and is not yet finished quite. I mean, we're still working on the final punch list, and having had our general contractor go out of business, and there's also, you know, it's a federal grant. It's onerous to try to get the money out of you guys. I think
allowability, Linda, allowability.
I know.
You do a great job getting the money. You got it.
No,
all.
I'm sorry. I just, you know, it's the federal government. It's not you. But in any case, I'm just wondering if those projects that are not quite finished, they have to finish by December. If there's a possibility of extension for them, if there's some extra support that the state library or somebody might give them. It's, you know, the state of construction in New England, but in Vermont in particular, is very difficult. And I feel for them, and I have no idea how far they are along in their process. Maybe they're further along than I imagine. But in any case, any support would be, I'm sure, well appreciated.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I'll take a shot at this, and then if Doug wants to chime in, he has a lot more context than I do, always, on everything. But I will say first that it was, for the department, it was a little bit sad, I guess, to see that Treasury has been so clear that they are not extending the use code 1C multi-purpose community facilities, which our program is part of that use code 1C portion of this grant. They are extending the deadline, the period of performance for the broadband build out for states, but this particular code that our program operates within is not open to extension, unfortunately. So what we've been doing is really clearly communicating that frequently. Linda, your team's project was so far along that we spared you those additional meetings, but we've moved to monthly meetings, monthly check-ins in some cases. We've met more, I think with one of our subrecipients meeting weekly, really making sure they understand what they need to do, how they need to do it, answering questions they have of us about getting the project done. And, you know, kind of right sizing projects, making sure that folks have the resources they need to complete their project. And if somebody has additional resources, potentially working with them to reallocate if somebody is coming in way over budget. So we are doing quite a lot to support them in completing, you know, as much of the scope as they can in time. We have seen some libraries where the expense of doing what they initially planned was, by the time the bids came in, was just too great. Up here in Grand Isle, we saw that they had a large meeting room addition, you know, for their new building. They had an L-shaped building initially with a large meeting room, and they really scaled that back. And so they'll still have meeting capabilities within a rectangular shape. So the department's been supporting folks as their bids came back kind of higher than anticipated, and making sure they're still meeting the scope of the project, but within the available funds that they have. But it has been, I think it has been kind of a sprint for some folks to complete in time, given the dynamics you're talking about. And I would say with the contractor going out of business, another library was even more impacted because their work had not yet begun with that contractor. So that was a really tough thing, and it's unfortunate that Treasury has made that decision, but I also believe they really are trying to wrap up ARPA funds and those programs by a certain date. It's a little frustrating for those of us in the use code 1C, probably in the library community around the country, because our programs were not approved as quickly as the broadband programs were approved. So we had a little bit of a compressed timeline, but we're trying to do the best with it. And I think we're going to have I'm very hopeful we're going to have 14 successful programs with improvements at all of the subrecipients. That was very long-winded, but I bet Doug has better information to share.
Kathy, it mostly just winds up with what you're saying. The current federal administration, it had been ambiguous until over the winter, and then they really made it clear that they were not going to allow extensions beyond the pure broadband fiber, expansion category. We can speculate about the reasons for that, but I think I've seen in a lot of areas that community facilities are not as high on their policy list as population-based broadband access. We've seen them remove funding from other community facilities programs. So I think it was not an oversight, it was intentional. And so we did look at, would we have to pull an audible and amend the program plan with Treasury and shift money from the libraries program into the broadband program. I worked hard at the risk with Kathy, and we decided we're going to do everything we can to make sure that money gets spent on libraries. We think we'll be able to do it. The recovery office does have a team to help support Kathy when it gets down to crunch time in the last couple of months of trying to make sure we formally expend all of those things. For the board to be aware of, the current administration does want ARPA to end. They do want to pretend the pandemic didn't happen, aside from trying to audit and potentially recapture funds. So I would anticipate scrutiny on these. And so that's one reason we've been trying to make sure our administration of it is very by the book, because we do anticipate near-term audits. We were fortunate that they closed out their coronavirus relief fund audits. And they may not open major audits here. Hopefully we're good. But if anything, they're not going to err on the side of being forgiving or understanding. What we've seen with other states, particularly blue or purple states, is recapture demands come very quickly after any issues are identified. even before state's given an opportunity to explain. So that, I just wanted to share the current environment, and that 12/31 date is a very hard deadline. But I'm confident we'll give Kathy's team support so that teams can get it done. But yes, there is a huge crunch on construction resources in the state. We were able to shift about 200 million in one-time construction projects to general fund as opposed to federal funds, so that they could happen in next year's construction season or the following year, because we just had too much one-time construction lined up to possibly accomplish by 12/31/26. And then that's all I have on that topic, but I wouldn't mind an opportunity to just throw some comments out if it's okay with the board.
It's fine, thank you.
Yeah. So I don't have Glenn's experience, but I have about 15 years working with like various boards, commissions, state agencies, et cetera. And I would definitely wholeheartedly support the board's approach to creating a framework in your bylaws as opposed to specificity. The one benefit of that wasn't discussed that I wanted to actually say to you on the record is that most members of the public are going to be pushed away or dissuaded by a high level of detail. So going towards that framework approach and intent actually is good for public engagement and public transparency. We've seen it in the Clean Water Board. When you pull back from the minutia and the detail and you talk about what you're trying to accomplish and why, and not the how as much, the public responds to that better, and you will tend to see more engagement. So I think it's not only easier for the board to navigate correctly, but it is also easier for the public to understand, engage, and participate in. So I think it does have benefits on both sides of the table. Some people look at giving up that level of detail as, oh, we should be more detailed, but it's just too much of a headache and we're not going to do it. I honestly don't think that level of detail benefits the public at all. And I think they would rather see executive summaries and synopsis and how are you trying to operate to fulfill this mission? And extremely picky. I feel even silly saying it, but I'm still going to say it. In an agenda construction, the public comment period before the business of the day,
We should flip it.
you should have the public comment. You can either have two, or you should have the public comment period after the business of the day. Because most people, if they come into a meeting knowing what they want to talk about, they won't forget before the public comment at the end. Right? But other members of the public might listen to your discussion and then have comment that they want to make at the end. So I've found public comment at the end to be more productive.
I think doing both, I think is kind of an interesting, I think of, so I'm used to city council in Burlington, public council. I went to one meeting, we had public comment that went on for 3 hours at the beginning. I was presenting, I presented finally in our business at 11:45 PM. So you don't want to have too much public comment, but I think it's like, if people aren't going to stay through the whole meeting, if they just come because they just want to register a comment or a question with the board, I think that's a good thing. But I agree, I mean, doubling it up and just say, oh, if you sat through the discussion, not that we get a lot of public here, but that we do, have that opportunity at the end as well. I think it's a good suggestion.
I think that what we tend to do, and maybe it's important to articulate it in the agenda, but the times we usually see members of the public is when you all are doing when you're considering a geographic naming. And typically that's when, in the past, our former board chair would say, oh, well, there are people here. So typically, if there is somebody here who might want to comment, they've been invited to after each time. And that's what I'm familiar with from the San Francisco Public Library model, which was public comment at the beginning and then public comment after each agenda item. You can end up with the same member of the public commenting each time, and then you need to focus their public comment. We're going to hear public comment on the topic. So that can be an important piece too, but we can definitely modify the agenda to include more public comment opportunities.
Yeah, maybe make it clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially where we have more substantive agenda. I mean, it's like, you're not gonna put a public comment after an in-person tour or, adoption of the agenda or whatever. But, your report is always very,
You'd be
it's like.
surprised. I heard public comments on the adoption of the agenda many times.
But your report itself has like 18 topics in it, which are all really important and rich. And so I think stopping after that for people to ask questions, the public to know it has that opportunity. And then other topics that we might take up.
And then, so we were talking about transparency and then engagement of the public. So you were talking, is it more the topic of like clean language to engage with people? Is that what you're saying? Or making more direct connections? Like we are at the St. Albans Free Library. We're talking about funding. There's some funding for libraries here in Franklin and Grand Island counties. It's, making that connection to people, being more explicit. Is that what you were describing?
No, I think actually, unsurprising for libraries, you're being very clear and transparent in how you're moving through the meeting and how you're talking. So absolutely no notes on how you're running the meeting. And I think any member of the public, in my opinion, would be very easy to follow it. I think providing them a little space behind substantive topics to jump in, because I'm a natural introvert, but I'm a trained extrovert. And by my nature, I would not say anything. The only reason I felt confident enough to step forward and jump in when I wasn't provided a space later on the agenda was my training in my profession. So I think for some other members of the public, they might just kind of sit back and not feel comfortable volunteering. So I do think it's, like I said, it's a minor note, but it can provide space for people, which is helpful. Like the details in the bylaws, getting into what you're trying to achieve in the general mechanism, and then not really going into, we're gonna meet on the third Tuesday of each, month. And yeah, getting into intent and making sure that's plain language, that is a tough balance to strike, because often when we get into intent, we start to naturally try to use words with more syllables.
We are a library.
That's true.
Words are important here.
And then, yeah, they are. And I wanted to throw out just one current affairs issue from the cabinet meeting this morning. The SEOC was receiving additional weather briefings today, and there's elevated risk in Franklin County and all across northern Vermont. I know many libraries do often act as sheltering locations.
Yes.
And so any ways that word can be disseminated, we don't want to alarm people, of course, but the risk level after 6 and 7 p.m. is trending upwards. And so the SEOC is activated and definitely watching.
Jeanette, are you there? I see your picture. There, she's great. Of course she's there. Jeanette, Jeanette and Tom, can you push out a message to folks and share information with the library community on the email distribution list that alerts them that the SEOC is activated, and that especially for the northern part of the state, that they should be aware of that and prepare? We don't want to alarm them, but.
Yeah, we can work on that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna forward you a graphic from a BM right now.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Doug.
Good timing on his visit.
Yeah.
Doug should come to all of our board meetings.
Yeah.
This is really helpful, and it's, it's a funny thing to create the agenda, and,
Yeah.
it's interesting how we do it versus how we articulate it. So it's good to really have that invitation to folks. And one thing I just want to comment on about the bylaws, when I review them, I think the general section, Article 1, where it talks about sort of what you do, there is this dual functionality that is called out in Article 1, but there is the fact that it's a deciding body with geographic naming versus an advisory body with you all advising me. We might want to make that more explicit here, so that it's clear and just like, just information for Doug, we run all of the meetings as if it's a deciding body so that the department doesn't have to do two different things. And that's why we're like so particular about trying to get open meeting law right, even if we may be sometimes doing too much and hopefully we're not missing anything. But that's really so that we just have one administrative process. But I think subcommittee, we may want to look at that carefully too. Like, how do we express that so that a Vermonter can understand those roles?
That's a good point.
And just operationally, agendas tend to be really important outreach tools. And so one of the things that I might suggest we also do is, because the librarian's report is kind of usually the heart of the information being communicated and then discussion, is that we just list under that the topics in your report. So and it makes for a longer agenda, but it then doesn't obligate, I mean, it should obligate us to go and read your report, but it doesn't, the general public may see, oh, they're gonna talk about children's literacy, programs there. I wouldn't have known that, because I probably wouldn't have gotten about Kathy's report before it to find that out. So putting the subtopic, you have it very nicely kind of outlined in the agenda. Not with time limit, just under the librarian's report, just highlights again the types of things that get discussed.
It's good feedback.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it'll be a good opportunity to review the process.
How punctual we
I
are.
know, I did not think it was gonna be 11:15. So are we staying like in the meeting then? We're not adjourning?
I think we're going to, I think we'll just move to the next agenda item, which is the in-person tour. Because there are only three of you here, but let's just stick with it the way it is, and then we'll excuse those who aren't with us anymore, and then we'll adjourn after the meeting, because people may be talking to you if the public came.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's a little wonky, I
But
guess.
I think before we do adjourn to that activity, just one more suggestion for future topical things is just the whole idea of collaboration. And I wrote Kathy a little note about this as kind of a core topic for the coming year, collaboration and cooperation between libraries themselves. So one of the things that I noted was I now can go check out books at the Shelburne Library because I'm a member of the Fletcher Free Library. So there's a common card among 5 or 6 libraries now. And I know in Chittenden County, there's a move to actually centralize their catalogs. So there'd be a shared catalog between a series of libraries. So I want a book, it's physically in Essex, but I can get it at my library and I can see its presence there. So I think there's some movement like that. And as we go into a continuing process of, resource constriction, which, is just going to be the way it is, the more that the department can do, and we can hopefully talk about and encourage collaborative and cooperative arrangements between libraries, experienced staff. I mean, it's kind of picking up on some of those topics. I wanted to be really interesting to me. And hopefully there's ways that we can then advise the library, department of libraries on how to continue to accentuate and support that there. So I just thematically just want to suggest that maybe we think about how to take that on.
Tom just came on screen and I think he has information that he could share. Maybe we could queue up an agenda item for a future meeting about interlibrary loan and the Clover platform and how that is all operating now, and then potentially some of these other things people are adding on. Tom, do you want to? Is it okay?
Yes. Yeah, totally fine.
Yeah, I'm happy to hop in. Glenn, I love the direction you're going here. We have been working on this certainly during the entirety of my career at the Department of Libraries and before that. So there have been some really fantastic developments over the last couple decades, which include the VOCAL shared catalog, which is part of the Green Mountain Library Consortium. So that has, I think, about 65 libraries, and Josh is there and he may be able to correct me on that. And then the Catamount Library Network has grown significantly. Actually, that was one of the first things that I helped set up when I came on board almost 14 years ago. So that now has, I think, about 24 members. So those are shared catalogs on the Koha software. So the Catamount library system does user-initiated interlibrary loan within the system. So all those libraries that are on that system, someone can go on and if they can just request something through the catalog and then it shows up at their library. So it's actually a very nice and efficient kind of seamless way to deliver information to Vermonters wherever they are. And I think that finally Vocal is considering that. You can imagine the logistics with this can be a little difficult, and there's certainly some trepidation on the part of larger libraries to do this because they feel like their collections are going to get hit. So I think Catamount has proven the concept over the last dozen years or so that it can work in Vermont. One of the fundamental issues that we have in Vermont is out-of-town user fees. So if you have a small library that's in a community that's near a community with a large library, sometimes what they'll do is they'll charge a user fee. And unfortunately, those have become a primary part of some libraries' budgets. So if we start to talk about a seamless system across the state, those people immediately think of those lost dollars from those other communities. And you also have to think about the flip side of that, which is that some communities would have access to libraries that they aren't paying for. And so I think there's some fundamental structural obstacles that have to be overcome, and we've tried to be creative in thinking about ways to do that. I think it's a wonderful area for exploration and discussion. I also think that we've explored some ideas of maybe having a director that with a degree that works at 3 libraries, that runs, say, 2 or 3 libraries, right? Because at each town they have a certain amount of money, that kind of thing. So, but that's a local thing. And as you know, we don't have governing power over these libraries. So there's certainly a lot of suggestions that we can make, and there's lots more ideas. So I won't go into this. I think everyone's probably getting ready for the tour, but I'd be very, very pleased to discuss this at future meetings.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to share the way, even when the libraries are choosing to participate in a consortium, typically the way that those books are moving, the department has a hand in that they're
Right.
typically moving through our courier, the statewide courier.
Yeah.
Linda, do you have a question? Comment?
Sorry, I thought we were going to adjourn, so I had sort of a closing comment, which is I'm really sorry that I can't be there. I've since COVID ended, post-COVID, I've been an advocate for returning to libraries and meeting there, and I'm just heartbroken that I can't be there today, but I'm sorry. So I hope you enjoy the tour, and I look forward to seeing you all again in October, I guess, right?
Yeah. Yeah, sorry to miss you.
For sure.
So, I'm happy to share the information. I have one last comment. That was such a wonderful closing. Remember that. So I heard Doug mentioning, about climate, change, and I was thinking a lot about libraries serving as a heating or cooling centers, and there's certainly mapping that the department has done, for that. These folks in this audience have heard much about, I'm part of another state entity, and we're looking at regional plans, and libraries are seen as not as cultural or resources or educational, they're seen as infrastructure. They're seen as facilities, and there's an opportunity, there's some mapping there where libraries are discussed and depicted, there, but that's another way, you were mentioning distributing information. That's another venue where libraries can share some of the resources that maybe people don't always think about, but certainly are very valuable, certainly on days like today, where we're getting into the upper 90s. So libraries are an important, entity for that. And so I just want to make a connection and thank you for your comments on that.
Thanks. So I'm just gonna move to the next item,
which is the tour.
okay. So we'll move to the tour and those of you that are online, will excuse you since you can't join us. But thank you so much for being here. Okay.
Oh, gosh, the pictures.